What is up, Packers fans? Happy Thursday. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can find the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. As always, thank you so incredibly much for joining me today. We're going to be getting into our grades from Packers, Browns. As you can imagine, some pretty good grades for the defense, and as you can imagine, some pretty abysmal grades for the offense. We'll get to those in just a moment. Before we get there, shout out to our brand new Pack-A-Day Podcast YouTube member, whose name I'm going to absolutely butcher, Hersajan Kirstev. Thank you so much for signing up. Appreciate you a ton, my friend. If you have not yet checked out those memberships, make sure to do so. Also, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, give those 5-star reviews. Those things help the channel a ton. They're super easy to do. Tell a friend. We always appreciate all of your wonderful support. We do have an injury update from Thursday's practice and a little bit of good news and some not so good news. Good news first. Javon Bullard is back practicing with the team, not fully cleared from concussion protocol yet, but a great step in the right direction. Hopefully he's able to go this week. Obviously the head injury is the most important thing, but if he's able to go, that certainly helps out the defense this week in Dallas. The bad news. We already know Zach Tom's not playing. Aaron Banks continued to not practice. And at the one spot they could ill afford any more injuries, Anthony Belton also did not practice at all on Thursday. That is a potential massive issue. Now, they do still have a potential starting five here that's workable, right? Rasheed Walker at left tackle, Jordan Morgan at left guard, Elton Jenkins at center, Sean Ryan at right guard, Darian Kennard at right tackle. There's a possibility you could go Jordan Morgan at right tackle and Darian Kennard at left guard as well. You could swap those two, but some form of that line is what they'll have to go with if, in fact, Banks cannot go and Belton cannot go. We don't have a full injury update on Belton yet as to exactly what the situation is or if he's going to be questionable, doubtful, out, anything like that, but not a great sign that he was not seen and not practicing on Thursday. That is definitely going to be one to monitor. On top of that, Rasheed Walker's limited with an injury, and the depth is now insanely thin. You have two players left on the active roster on the offensive line. Brant Banks, who they just brought up from the practice squad, who's an undrafted free agent. And then the only other player is Donovan Jennings. That's it. Probably Banks as your swing tackle, Donovan Jennings as your swing interior player. And then they're going to have to call up one of two players. Dalton Cooper. Yes, I'm sure you knew exactly who Dalton Cooper was before I started saying this. He's on the practice squad. They picked him up right after the cutdown time. And then Lacita Smith, who they just brought back to the practice squad yesterday. That's it. And with Walker being beat up, you might want to go with the extra offensive lineman just in case. They could have all of those players active. It's not a great state of affairs for the offensive line right now. Now, the semi-good news here is that Anthony Belton and Aaron Banks have not been ruled out yet, at least as of recording this. So there is maybe still some chance that they could work their way back. But needless to say, this offensive line is extremely beat up at the moment. Green Bay is a little bit grasping for straws. Thank goodness they made that Darian Kennard trade right at cutdown time. Otherwise, I mean, you're probably going Brant Banks as a starting tackle right now if you don't have him. So not a great state of affairs. They already, even the ones that have been the starters, have not been playing well, at least going back to a week ago. This is going to be huge for Green Bay just to see who's out there. And more importantly, if they can gel together and play some cohesive football. Thankfully, Dallas's defensive front is not exactly extremely formidable, but Kenny Clark is going to want to get his, and Jadeveon Clowney in his first game as a Dallas Cowboy is going to want to make an impact in a first impression as well. So you can never take anything too for granted. Dante Fowler has had a lot of success in this league. Osa Odigizua is a very good defensive tackle. So while Dallas's defensive front and their defense in general has been pretty abysmal, this is not anything that you can take for granted based on where this Packers offensive line is at right now. All right, let's get into our grades from Packers Browns without any further ado. You will be able to check out the full grades over at PackerReport.com. Probably a little bit later on Thursday. I'm going to try to get them up as soon as possible, but Thursday night at the latest, they'll certainly be out there for you by Friday morning. But those will be up sooner rather than later. Again, PackerReport.com. Let's start with offense. Let's get it out of the way. Let's regurgitate this up and vomit it out for the last time. Only three players graded in the positive on offense. and it's not anything super sexy. John Fitzpatrick is your highest graded Packer from this game with a plus 0.3, caught the touchdown pass, had a couple solid blocks, had another reception. That's it. That's his day in a nutshell. Had a couple blocks he'd probably like to have back, which is going to happen at tight end. But overall, your highest graded Packer is number 3, maybe number 2 tight end, John Fitzpatrick. That all you need to know pretty much about your day right then and there. That's no disrespect to John Fitzpatrick, who again had a really nice day. He's deserving of this. But if John Fitzpatrick is your top graded offensive player with a plus 0.3, you wouldn't even need to tell me anything else. I would have been like, yeah, Green Bay probably lost that game. Number 2, Savion Williams, plus 0.15. Here's the thing about Savion. As a receiver runner, it was basically a flat neutral grade. He absolutely obliterated, I think it was Grant Delpit, the Brown safety, on a block. That's where your positive basically came in on one blocking play. And that's what got Savion Williams in very limited snaps into the positive in this game. So I wish I could tell you, yep, big time catch, or he had a big time run as a gadget player or something like that. He just didn't, right? So that was basically the crux of Savion Williams getting into the positive, was one bone crushing block. And I believe it was Grant Delpit for the Browns. And then last but not least, with a plus 0.05 grade, just a hair above neutral, was Josh Jacobs, who did everything he could to try to get any sort of positive yardage. He did have the play to the outside on that little screen that he took, 17, 18 yards, which helped him in this one. But it was tough sledding for Jacobs, and even he had trouble getting anything going against this Browns defense. So 3 positive players: John Fitzpatrick plus 0.3, Savion Williams plus 0.15, and then Josh Jacobs plus 0.05. Again, no other Packers player graded in the positive, which is pretty remarkable overall. Bottom 3 on offense. It will come as no shock to you whatsoever. Jordan Morgan, negative 1.80 grade, the lowest graded player on the day. Just a really tough game. I did think that at right tackle, he played a little bit better. That he was on the outside using kind of his athleticism a little bit more. It looked a little bit more natural. Not great, not wonderful, not anything you're writing home about, but it felt to me he looked a little bit more comfortable there than he did inside at guard. Everything after that was pretty much an unmitigated nightmare. The multiple penalties, getting beat immediately on numerous occasions, couldn't hold up as a run blocker, couldn't hold up as a pass protector. Again, allowed those immediate pressures. That's not even including the play on the field goal block, because that's a special teams play. It was a day to forget for Jordan Morgan. He's going to need to add at some point some functional strength. He's going to have to get his technique much better. And oh, by the way, he's going to have to play a massive role and start and play every snap this week against Dallas. At least that's what it looks like at the moment. So hopefully Morgan can bounce back. We've not seen him play that poorly in any of his other, times where he's either started or rotated in games. So hopefully this was a bit of a one-off, but it was a very poor performance from Jordan Morgan. Jordan Morgan is one thing, but the second one here, Elgton Jenkins, negative 1.3 grade, is an entirely another one. This is a player that you have to count on. And to Elgton Jenkins' credit, he said he played like bleep this past week. I don't think he was good in the first 2 games either. This needs to be a massive bounce back for Elgton Jenkins in week 4. He is capable of playing so much better than this. And I mean so much. Elgton used to be somebody who could grade plus 1.3 on the offensive line. A negative 1.3 is atrocious, especially for a player of his caliber, making as much money as he is on the interior of the offensive line. He has got to be the leader up front, especially with Zach Tom out. He needs to not only lead by example, but he needs to be sort of the fulcrum that everything kind of balances upon for that offensive line. I didn't love his vision, meaning like where he was going with his eyes to block and keeping an eye on some of the stuff that was going on the backside. I didn't love his effort. I didn't love his technique. I didn't love anything about his game. This was about as poor of a performance as you will ever see Elgton Jenkins have. He's aware of it. I appreciate that from him. Hopefully he has a big bounce back this week, but that cannot be the case for Elgton if Green Bay has any real opportunity to improve this offensive line play, including this week. They need a much better Jenkins at center this upcoming week and beyond. Number 3 is a player that I've seen given a little bit of a pass. I I struggled with him a little bit more in this game. That's Anthony Belton, negative 1.00 grade. I think people thought Belton just came in and had this, fine performance. I did not see it that way at all. I thought he struggled. That technique isn't quite there. You can just tell his hands are all over the place. He's getting far outside, and he's going to be susceptible to holding penalties because of it. There was a couple he probably could have got called for. He got beat on the edge. He got beat on the inside. He is still a major work in progress. So I still think not ideal that he is out this week. I think he would have been the starter at right tackle. And I still think there's a good player there who is developing in real time. But I didn't think that this was just like Belton went in and played so much better. He struggled in this one too, and still has a long ways to go from a finished product there at right tackle. So 3 lowest graded players, not surprising, all in the offensive line. Jordan Morgan, negative 1.8, Elton Jenkins, negative 1.3, and Anthony Belton, negative 1.00. Hey friends, it's time to start getting our sleeper picks in for week 4. Vikings, Steelers, our first international game of the year. I think this one's going to be a defensive struggle, so I'm going to be going fewer on a lot of these categories, including Aaron Rodgers, fewer than 202.5 passing yards. I think this Vikings defense is going to be all over Aaron Rodgers, and I think passing the football is going to be extremely difficult in this game. Meanwhile, Jordan Mason, less than 79.5 rushing yards. To me, this Steelers defense is going to make Carson Wentz beat them and make sure that Jordan Mason is not getting the requisite yardage to need to get a win internationally. So I'm going Jordan Mason, fewer than 79.5 rushing yards. And last but not least, Justin Jefferson, more than 5.5 receptions. This is the one that I'm making an exception on for what I believe is going to be a defensive struggle. I think Minnesota is going to feed Justin Jefferson, get him involved early and often, and make him the star of that Sunday morning international game. Just to recap, Aaron Rodgers, fewer than 202.5 passing yards, Jordan Mason, fewer than 79.5 rushing yards, and Justin Jefferson, more than 5.5 receptions. Make sure to get your picks in over on Sleeper. You can get a 100% match up to $100 by using code PACKETDAY. Again, a 100% match up to $100 by utilizing code PACKETDAY. Make sure to use that code. Check it out over on Sleeper. And make sure that you understand that terms and conditions can apply. So check out those terms and conditions over on Sleeper. It is available in over 25 states. So what are you waiting for? Get after it right now. For those of you who know, I've been grading every player on every play since 2017. 2017. So we've been doing this for a hot second. This is the 4th lowest graded game that I have ever given the offense since the start of 2017. The 3 games that were lower was 2022, week 10 versus the New York Jets. The offense had a negative 10.15 grade in that game. The second lowest was 2019, week 12 at the 49ers. The offense had a negative 9.1 grade in that game. The third lowest was 2022, week 1 in Minnesota, negative 8.6 grade. And then this was the 4th lowest grade at the Cleveland Browns in week 3, negative 6.90 grade. So the 4th lowest offensive grade that I have given since the start of 2017. Meanwhile, the offensive line of that negative 6.90 was negative 5.95, which is the 5th lowest grade I've ever given the offensive line since 2017. Those offensive line grades, the highest one, Darian Kennard, who had a neutral grade in 4 snaps. Congratulations, Darian Kennard. In 4 snaps, you graded as neutral. Zach Tom had a negative 0.1 grade in the 1 snap that he played. Honestly, could have probably been a little bit lower. He got beat clean on that play. Sean Ryan, negative 0.15. I thought he had all things considered, based on the chaos that was going on around him, I thought it was a fine game from Sean Ryan. He would be the very least of my concerns at this moment. Aaron Banks, who only played, a little over, I think actually half the game exactly, negative 0.65. He really struggled in this game. Rasheed Walker, negative 0.95. He really struggled in this game. And then Anthony Belton, as we talked about, negative 1. Jenkins, negative 1.3. And Jordan Morgan, negative 1.8. So a brutal, brutal, brutal day for the offensive line. Jordan Love, I should say, is the only other sort of noteworthy one here. He ended up with a base neutral 0.0 grade. He had a plus grade, like a high plus grade, or not high, but like just a little over a 1 grade on this one, going into that interception, through the very brutal interception, which was a very negative grade. Had a couple positives at the end of it to kind of get them down into field goal range. It ended up being a net neutral. If that interception was not thrown, would have been a solid day for Jordan overall. Nothing too sexy, but did enough, I thought, what he could do given all the stuff that was going on around him. Also, like, should have probably been a game-winning touchdown, or at least huge play to Matthew Golden, that Golden runs out of bounds on. And then, should have been a game-winning field goal drive at the end to kind of have that comeback drive too. Just unfortunately, the field goal is missed. There was good stuff from Jordan in this game. In the end, the interception was certainly wrong throw, wrong time, and can't make that mistake in that situation. But in totality, it graded as a net neutral grade for Jordan Love. All right, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. Top 3 players on defense. This is like the opposite of the offense. On the defense, all 3 were on the defensive line. Rashawn Gary plus 0.55, Micah Parsons plus 0.5, and LVN plus 0.45. I thought Gary was really good in this game, set the edge well, was tenacious off the edge, had the 2 sacks, took advantage of the opportunities when they were given to him. Very few negative plays, and the negatives that he had were very small, like negative 0.05s, like just really like kind of ticky-tacky stuff. I thought he did a great job all throughout the game of taking advantage of his one-on-ones, or in the case of that 1 sack when he wasn't blocked at all, making the plays that were there for him and not having anything that was really egregious in any way, shape, or form. So real solid day for Rashawn Gary. Micah Parsons would have had his normal probably like plus like 1.0 game, save for 2 big offsides penalties. One that would have got them off the field on 3rd down. They got off the field on 3rd down in the next play anyway, so it was not brutal. But then another one right before the field goal, right at the end, where he was offsides on that very first play. He also had a few more times where he was blocked just straight up in this one, which has not really happened over the first couple weeks. So that may have had to just do with more snaps and things like that. But he had a couple more where he was just kind of blocked straight up in this one. So he was still a monster. Don't get me wrong. He had a really good game, which is why he was the 2nd highest graded player on defense. But had it not been for the penalties and maybe a couple plays here or there, this would have been another epic, 1 point something grade for Micah Parsons in this one. And then LVN, we are starting to see a real evolution from him, actually winning with pass rush moves, still winning with speed to power, winning on the outside, winning on the interior, very little negatives. He just looks like a totally different player in year 3. It's one of the biggest developments for Green Bay so far. He has certainly been a benefactor of Micah Parsons being out there as well, but he's just playing darn good football in and of himself. So kudos to him. And again, not a shocking surprise that the top 3 players on defense were all on the defensive line. Bottom 3 on defense is, again, opposite of the offense. Thankfully, only 3 players that graded in the negative, and all 3 of them were barely. Evan Williams, negative 0.2. He was involved in that play where, the tight end broke multiple tackles on the play. So he was involved in that. And then had the pass interference. I thought it was a little ticky-tacky, but had the pass interference in the end zone on the final touchdown, or the touchdown drive, the 2-play drive. And then also allowed that completion on the final play of the game inside to Njoku. Mostly accident forgiveness there because you're kind of allowing them to let the clock tick, but he does still allow the completion on the play. So just some ones at the end of this game that got him a little bit in the negative. Nothing major for Evan. Nasir Stackhouse, negative 0.15. Just had a few pass rush snaps where he couldn't really generate any sort of rush, which is why he was in the negative. And then Javon Bullard, negative 0.05. Couple coverage plays he'd like to have back, but was also flying around the football. I still love the way that he played in this game. You don't want him matched up one-on-one too much in coverage. It's just his kind of Achilles heel. He does so much other stuff amazing that it's fun to watch him play. I really enjoy it, but you got to limit how much he gets matched up one-on-one in coverage. And a couple of those plays, he ended up grading in the negative, but mostly a neutral grade for Javon Bullard overall. Again, no other negatives. Some other noteworthy positives. Kingsley Enagbare barely played in this one, but had a plus 0.4 grade. PFF had him as their highest graded player because, again, if you have that high of a grade on very minimal snaps, your average is going to be higher. So that's going to shoot to the top a little bit more. But he was fantastic in this one, not only against the run, he had a pass rush where he dipped right under the offensive tackle and got to the quarterback in a blink of an eye. Probably unlucky not to have a sack off of that one where the quarterback, Joe Flacco, just got rid of the ball really quick. But I thought he was really impressive. I thought this is his best game probably since, what was it, like the Titans game early last year. But some really good stuff from Enagbare in this one. Isaiah McDuffie was flying around the football. His only negative, he was also involved in that missed tackle on the tight end. So that's one that he would like to have back there. But outside of that, he had like 3 or 4 tackles and minimal playing time. I really like the way that he played. And honestly, McDuffie is in very minimal time had really positive performances in every single one of the games so far. Doesn't get out there much, but when he does, he's playing good football. And then Nate Hobbs, the other noteworthy one, plus 0.25. I thought he covered really tight in this game. Didn't have any like sort of pass interference issues or anything like that. And was just sticky in coverage all day, helped out as a tackler, and was kind of everything that you wanted, both on the outside and a little bit in the slot as well, which if Bullard's not able to go, you'll likely see Hobbs much more in the slot this upcoming week. Just to recap it in totality, top 3 on offense, John Fitzpatrick, Savion Williams, and Josh Jacobs. Bottom 3 on offense, Jordan Morgan, Elton Jenkins, and